to the RunRX Podcast, where we talk about all things running. As many runners know, it's 90% mental. So join Coach Valerie and Coach Caroline as we go through the mental side of running.
Welcome, everybody, to the RunRX Podcast. I'm your host, Coach Caroline, and I am here with Coach Valerie. And Coach, we've had some things come up recently. Basically, the question I had for you is, we get bombarded by so many articles, and like I think I told you about an ad today for running shoes and exercise and strength training and mobility. We're just constantly getting bombarded about what are the best things or what should I be doing to help my running. And a lot of it is wrong. And I know you don't like that word, but it's just factually not correct. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with kind of the number one thing I hear the most. So, and I just read an article on this, so I'm actually going to quote a few things from the article. A lot of people, when they come into running and they get a running injury, right? So you go to the sports doctor. So, I mean, if you've heard this said to you, you can relate. Basically, you hear, this is what you hear all the time. Your glutes aren't firing. I've heard that for 22 years, guys.
Yeah, I was told that.
It's yeah. I just worked with a high school runner on Friday. She's 15 years old, and that's what they told her. So I'm 50 and she's 15, and there's been no change. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of sad,
Crazy.
right? So in the art. So by the way, so let me just say real quick, when you run, every one of your muscles is important and is part of running. And when we try to separate muscles is when we kind of can get ourselves in trouble. And so, for example, if I have a really, like, you meet someone in a gym and they're like, my back squat is 500 pounds, is the first thing you think, wow, you must run so well.
I know.
Not really. And when you see a guy cross the marathon, is your first thought, wow, I bet that guy can squat? Not at all.
Yeah.
You see what I mean?
I wonder what his power squat is. His
Yeah,
back squat is.
yeah, I bet his power squat is amazing. And that's nothing wrong with that, guys. But the idea then is to understand what is strength. And when someone says to you, your glutes aren't firing, you need to work on your glute strength for your run, you should understand why. So that's my thing. So let's talk about glute strength. Okay, so I saw an article and it just said, and that was what the title said. It said, why is hip strength important for running? So things like that always trigger me to read. I get excited because I love strength training. So I'm reading it. And it says, you need to improve your ability to generate force in your hip muscles. So immediately I was like, oh no, here's the challenge, guys. First, and by the way, I'm going to geek out for just a second. And just so you know, when I first started learning about pose method with Dr. Romanov, he would give me like physics equations and I would just smile and nod and pretend like I didn't understand his language. I literally had to go buy a book on like basic physics. I didn't understand. I couldn't just quote you what is force and what is force times distance and what is, you see what I mean?
Yeah.
We are missing out on our running because our hips are not generating force. Force comes from impact of two bodies, two things in motion. So where is the force happening? It's at the ground with your foot, right? Foot to ground contact. Now, does the force go up through our bodies? Is there impact? In 100%. However, the reason you need hip strength isn't because your hips are generating any force. It's because you want your hips to be stable. So when you touch down on the ground, your body's in balance, ready to fall forward and pull your foot from the ground using 10% active muscle contraction. So the challenge is, and it's hamstring. So we're telling people, when you say to someone, it's the force you need in the hip, what does that immediately make you think of? Touching the ground.
Yeah.
I need to be strong so that when I'm on the ground, I can use my strength and generate force with my glutes. See?
Yeah.
That's the thinking. And then the same article, by the way, goes on to say maximum hip extension occurs as you toe off, as you push off the back of the ground, as your running speed increases, you are generating more force and creating greater movement. Okay. And then it says, this is the same as when you throw a rubber ball into the ground. The more forcefully you throw it, the greater the height the ball will bounce back.
Ouch.
So again, ouch. Because again, what they're saying is what they're saying are correct things. So guys, when your foot touches down, and this is such a cool thing to know, okay, there's 4 forces that work in running. Gravity is number 1. Ground reaction force is number 2, which is directly related to gravity. You are going to touch the ground. Running is an impact sport. So gravity, then ground reaction, and then muscle elasticity. And lastly is active muscle contraction. The first 3 are gratuitous, meaning gravity exists. It's there for all of us. Ground reaction force, you cannot get away from. Your body is going to touch the ground. And muscle elasticity, we can all develop and use. So we all have muscle elasticity. It's whether or not we're using it. Those 3 things in the beginning all work together in a positive way to help you get your foot off the ground. And the more you get comfortable with how the body works in running, what you'll realize is, yes, I need to have strength in my hips. I need to have strength. I need to have balance. I need to be able to hold my body in a line, you know, the ears, shoulders, hips in line. But I need to do that so that I can be in the pose and use gravity to fall forward and pull my foot from the ground, not try to take my body and throw it at the ground or generate any kind of force by either pushing and extending or by reaching. You see the difference, or does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Okay. So go ahead.
No. I'm sure if I was listening to this right now, I might be a little confused. And guys, this is just something that I had to work through myself, because when I first started with pose, remember, I was a lifter first before I was a runner. So I came out of a weight room running like a weight lifter. Like I was pounding the pavement and I was heel striking, and pushing was so powerful. And everyone would be like, "Oh, you're so strong. Push in the ground and use your glutes and And I was like, all right. I pushed my way all the way through shin splints, plantar fasciitis. All of that effort is just misdirected. You want to have the strength in your glutes to hold your shoulders up over your hips and your head over your head up. And so that's my challenge.
That was going to be my question, where, okay, so you do need strength.
Oh yeah.
But the strength comes from holding your body in the upright position and
Correct.
being able to control it as you're falling with gravity.
Right.
So what are some key strength things that as runners we should be looking at?
Sure. And this is where, by the way, again, most of the literature will give you really good exercises. So exercises like glute bridges are really good. And you can do single leg glute bridges and step ups and squats.
So isn't that strengthening my glutes though? This is
in 100%. Yeah. And this is what I want people to understand is it's not the idea. Here it is. Why do I need to have strong glutes is what you should be thinking about.
Okay.
The reason so if someone comes to me and they have, okay, let's go to this. Hi, Valerie, I have IT band issues. My hip hurts when I run. My PT said it's because my glutes are weak. And I'm here to say it really is more than likely your hip hurts because you're either pushing or reaching. You're doing the incorrect movement in your run, which is putting extra tension on the hip. So strength training is great. It's I love it. You need to be strong to hold any position you want to be in. Sitting, standing, squatting, running, walking. You need to have strength to hold those positions. And that includes glute strength, core strength, quad strength, calf strength, foot strength. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
We need
so I need the glute strength that the PT says I need to do, but I also need to correct the movement, because just strengthening that glute is not going to fix my IT band.
Correct. it's
Okay.
just like stretching the hip isn't just going to fix it either.
Right.
I mean, you can stretch it and stretch it and stretch it. You can strengthen it and strengthen. You can put the bands on and do those crab walks all day long. And but if every time you go out to run, you're pushing or reaching, at some point your hip is like, "Hey, man, I can't take it." That's
Yeah.
3 times. It's 3 times your body weight on that hip, whether you have strong glutes or not. You see what I mean?
Totally. I think people need to realize that is that you're not saying don't strengthen your glutes. You're not saying don't stretch. Obviously, we're skill strength and self-care guys,
right.
but you can't
Look
just
at
do
but
one or
why
even
you
two.
have to
There's
have,
three.
well, you have to have intent in your movement. I think
Right.
own your movement. I'm not just stretching to stretch. I'm not just strength training to strength train. And if I think that one body part can really dictate my movement like that, then what is the movement? Like, you tell me. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So, for example, this high school kid, her calf hurts when she runs. I mean, it's just very painful. Every time she tries to run faster, her calf hurts. And her coach's answer was, "Okay, you're going to ride the bike instead." Well, how is that
Okay.
helping?
That doesn't.
How is
Yeah.
that helping out? Right. So her
Yeah.
parents took her to see a physical therapist, and the physical therapist said, "Oh, I see the problem. Her glutes aren't firing." And her parents are like, "What do we do?" They're like, "Oh, you come here 3 days a week. We're going to do clams, and we're going to do, you know what I mean? All this work."
Yeah.
And guess what? Every time she goes running, her calf still hurts. And so, of course, when I did a gait analysis so we could see how she's running, well, she's pushing off her back foot every single time she runs. Every step she takes her back foot and she extends her knee, pressing into the ground, stressing the entire posterior chain. So you can strengthen her glutes all day long, but if she keeps pushing and extending like that, it just keeps hurting it just keeps repeating the same injury. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So they're not looking at why there's strength in the glute if they're not going to help her correct why she's in pain to start with.
Right.
That's my challenge. And then, of course, yeah, we strengthen the glute, we strengthen the calf. See what I mean? We love, you know this, we love strength training. We just want you to understand why you're strength training, and that just by isolating a muscle isn't going to be what fixes your running. It's going to be working with your whole body to make sure you're in the right place at the right time for your run.
Right. And that's the other thing that I get frustrated about since meeting you and since working with you is that people are like, my calf hurts. And then they'll tell us, well, I rolled my calf and I strengthened my calf, or I did ball foot hops, everything calf, calf, calf. And then I kind of want to go, did you roll your foot? Did you roll your butt?
Right.
Did you roll your hip? What about your shoulder? Like we've talked about this. Okay, so it's your left calf that hurts. Did you roll your right shoulder?
Right.
And people will say,
right.
why? And I keep trying to tell them because it's all connected.
Right. You're
It's
one
so
unit.
amazing to me.
Yeah. And that's the fun part. But well, I mean, you can look at it 2 ways, because I do agree, of course, and we talk about this a lot with our members, that when you have an area that's really upsetting you, you're going to spend more time with that area. It's natural. And that's okay. But you have to remember that if I only work this one area, then the rest of the body's getting, you're right. Like your right hip might be, and if your right hip is hurting a lot of times, you're right. It's the shoulder, it's the foot, it's the ankle. And we don't know, right, until we start kind of playing around. So we
and the other thing I
that.
find very amazing is like they'll come in with, say, my right hip, right? Then you work with them, they learn to run correctly, they get their technique going, they're not quite right, but oh, my right hip isn't working, is no longer hurting. Then all of a sudden they come back to us in a panic and say, oh, now it's my left hamstring. I'm like, okay, well, you've changed your movement. Your body's now adjusting to a totally different way of moving. So without you realizing, your left hamstring was just a little weak. So now we got to work on the left hamstring. And I keep trying to remind them, you might come back in 2 weeks and it could be your right butt cheek. It evolves, it grows, your body has to, it doesn't just poof.
Right.
Correct all movement in all places.
Right. I just think, so let's just go back full circle because now we're off on a tangent.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry.
yeah. Here's the main thing we really wanted to get across today was the hips, and the
Yeah.
challenge for a lot of people is the hip muscles get kind of roped in as glutes. And so people just immediately think if I strengthen my glutes, it's going to help me in my run. And my advice to you is to understand why you need the strength for your run. So that way you are doing, because we really recommend, we have them, you can look in the, they're definitely in the 30-day reboot. We go a little bit more into it in the membership, but we do hip specific exercises that are past the squats, step ups, lunges, and it's not
Right.
like it's anything secret. It's just that we really like doing exercises like straight leg hip lifts that really just isolate that area exactly for the reason to strengthen it. But even more than that is for you as a runner to develop your own relationship with your hip. So you understand your own actions in running. That's what I love about it. Because while you're running, you're just running. You want to be able to just pull your foot. You're focused on your run. You're not thinking about active muscles when you're running. But when you're doing your training and when you're doing your strength work and when you're doing your self-care, then you can feel it and understand it. So someone says to you, your glutes aren't firing, just smile and nod. Because yes, they are, or you would be bent over. Your
That's
glutes
true.
hold
That's
your
true.
body up. So none of us, our glutes aren't firing. It's just a silly phrase. And the idea really behind it was that when your foot's on the ground, your hip's not stable. Why is the hip not stable? Well, you're either pushing or pulling. You're on the ground too long. Let's figure out that reason. See? And that way, when
Yeah.
you're running, you do your strength exercises, but when you practice your running, you understand what you're doing in the run instead of thinking, you see what I mean? If I don't understand
Right.
why I need to have stronger glutes, then I'm still going to push or reach.
Absolutely, 100%. And that being said, guys, in the 30-day reboot that's on our YouTube channel, all of the exercises, all of the drills, everything, the strength workouts are specific to help you to be a better runner. Okay? They're not just arbitrary thrown in there, right? Everything you've put together is to help as a runner become a more stable runner in being
Yeah.
able to hold your hips over your,
Right. And the fun thing is with runners, like you don't need a ton of strength training. I mean,
Right.
you want to have enough so that hip is stable. So your foot is strong enough to support you when you're running. This is the strength you need. And it's fun because you're going to feel the benefits when you understand why, when you understand how to run, you're working on how to run. The more you feel connected as with your whole body, you'll feel when you're not right. And then that's when you talked about, that's when later on you can be like, oh, I need some extra rolling on my hips or my shoulders. But for right now, guys, I would focus on just the whole functional strength of your body.
Definitely. Okay, guys, thanks for being with us, and we will talk to you next week.
Thank you for joining us on the RunRX Podcast. If you'd like to know more, join us at www.runrx.fit. And if you have additional questions that you'd like answered on the podcast, email us at support@runrx.fit.